Hello everyone, I hope you're having a nice day. I've been feeling kind of nostalgic lately, and I was thinking about how on DeviantArt, people would decorate their profiles with stamps and page dolls and stuff. So I wanted to make some for myself. I don't really have a page to put them on at the moment. It's something I've been meaning to work on, making a portfolio website for my art or something like that. But yeah, I kind of made these two in the hopes that it would motivate me to actually work on a web page. But while that remains to be seen, I did have a lot of fun making these little pixels of my OCs Peter and William, and I'm pretty excited to share the process with you. I got this app, Square, which I'm not sponsored, for my iPad. It's a pretty nice program. I like that it also has support for making tile maps as well, so if you were going to make a game, I think that that would be a feature that would be really, really useful. I'll probably try it out eventually, but I haven't gotten around to it yet. I haven't played around with the app too much, but I feel like if you want to make pixel art on the iPad, it seems like it's a pretty good option. It's quite similar to Sprite if you've used that, but it's definitely very tablet mobile friendly in its design. It's very clean and easy to hide things if you aren't using them, and also it isn't subscription based, which is nice as well. There's also a lot of different themes and stuff, so mine is quite gray, but you can make it kind of any color, any fonts you want, which I think is nice as well. You could make it quite dark and have kind of like a dark mode if that's better for your eyes. I've done a little bit of pixel art before, but I wouldn't really consider myself a pixel artist. I don't totally know what I'm doing, but I know enough to get by, I suppose. I kind of talked in my last video about how I really want to be doing a lot of black and white ink drawings, and so I thought it would be fun to try and do black and white kind of one bit style for these pixels so that they'll match the other stuff that I'm working on in the future, and they'll look very harmonious on that webpage that I will make for sure one day. So for these guys, as with any drawing, the first step is to sketch. I wanted to have them be matching, so I thought it would be nice to draw them both sitting down, and then I could kind of position them like bookends if I wanted to as well. I think they'll look nice on either side of a block of text, for example. I started with Peter since I had a better idea right away of what I wanted his pose to look like. I wanted him to be sitting, kind of leaning back, cross-legged with his little foot kicking out. I find with pixel art, probably because the canvas is so small, that sketches can get really messy really, really quickly. So I kind of had to end up going in and erasing a bunch of the sketch multiple times so that I could actually see what I was trying to convey with my sketch. For William, I took the same approach. I struggled a little bit more with him though. I'm not totally sure why. His proportions were definitely kind of off at first, but I managed to get him and Peter looking like they belonged together. It just took a little bit of extra work. Otherwise though, it was the same process, just a scribbly sketch trying to get down the pose. I think that this pose ended up being a lot harder than I anticipated it being. I end up having to fiddle with the foreshortening on his leg a lot, even after I stopped sketching and moved into cleaning it up and kind of lining it. I think it was particularly hard also because I wanted it to have a nice silhouette, because it's so simple and so few colors. I found that the silhouette was really important. And if his boot just lined up completely with his other boot, then it would be really hard to see. So dealing with both kind of the foreshortening of his leg being sort of tucked back away from the camera, plus not having his two boots line up with each other too much, made it quite tricky and a little bit more difficult than I had been anticipating. So after getting the sketches down, I moved on to line art, I guess, if you can call it that. With pixel art, one of the few things I do know about it is that you want to make sure that your angles and curves have nice even steps. So if you have to have two pixels directly next to each other to make a curve work, you also want to make sure that those two pixel lines are together within the curve and that they kind of step up from 1 pixel, 2 pixels, 3 pixels as well, so that the line curves nicely, because otherwise the line doesn't look straight, it starts to look a bit wiggly. And I also know that you want sort of corners and where things meet generally to end in 2 pixels that are like diagonal to each other, rather than having it be a right angled corner with 3 pixels, because that can make it look a little bit thicker and really, really pointy as well. You can use this pointiness to your advantage sometimes, which I have done in both of these, but it's just something that I remember learning that you want to avoid, so I try to do that. And so basically this means that, for me at least, line work with pixel art is kind of an exercise in erasing errant pixels. I find it a lot easier to draw a line or a curve just regularly and then to go in and erase and clean it up to make it look pretty than I do to try to draw each pixel initially, because I'm not totally sure where they go. The process might take a little bit longer, I'm not really sure, but I think it's just the easiest, for me anyway. I imagine if you actually knew what you were doing, you might be able to just do it right initially, since, like, you know, having experience, you would probably know where the pixels actually needed to go, but I do not know that, and I do not know what I'm doing, so this way is the way that I will continue to do it, for now anyway. So then I moved on to blocking in the color, or the white, I guess, in this case. On Peter's pixel, I also add in some white lines to break up the black. I didn't end up doing that on Will's pixel. I actually kind of forgot until I was thinking about it just now, but it's fine, I think. He doesn't really need it as much. He has less overlap of blacks against blacks on his outfit, unlike Peter with his like lapels and stuff. So I think it's okay. He doesn't really need it. And so I also added some hatching to Peter's hair, since it's sort of a blonde color, and to Will's armor since it's steel. I think also that the texture and kind of like addition of like a mid-tone helps to break up the white and black. I also briefly considered adding in a gray color on Peter's pixel since I did that one first, but I think I like this decision to do the hatching a lot better, and it does then actually stick to the 1-bit pixel idea that I initially had. It was a little tricky getting the hatching to work and not disturb the lines and to make things sort of unintelligible. Like, the lines got a little bit goopy when the hatching started touching them, but I think ultimately it was really worth it. They look quite stylish in my opinion, which I really like. Though I don't actually know if it's hatching, if it's pixels. I know with pixels that you do like dithering, and I don't know, maybe this counts as dithering and not hatching? I don't know. Maybe, I guess I should probably just like look it up actually, and then I'll know. Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, so dithering seems like it's more like dots or patterns of dots and not so much lines, it seems. So I'll say this is hatching. So, anyway, after I finished doing all of the coloring, I was like, you know what would be fun? Animation! I actually really enjoy adding simple little animations to pixels. I've done it before, nothing very complicated, mostly like a little bounce or a blink animation, so not too different from this stuff. I really wanted Peter to be kicking his foot. I think I mentioned that when I was kind of sketching him out. I had that in my mind, so I rotated his foot kind of at the ankle joint, up and then down. I really had to go in and clean it up. It was a little bit of a trial, but I do think it was easier to do it this way than it would have been to try to like figure out where his foot would be. And with animation, you also have to be careful about maintaining mass as well, which is something I know about it. I had an issue here where I had slimmed his foot down way too much at one point and it looked really bad, so I had to go back in and fix that up. I also chose to have his foot swing down just slightly, like technically the frame isn't necessary for the animation. He could just kick it up, but by adding the slight downswing, it adds a little bit of bounce to the animation. I took like one animation class once and I learned a little bit about like overshoot and timing charts, but I try to keep those things in mind when I'm definitely not an animator, and this is about the extent of my animation abilities. I also work in a blink. I think that having 2 motions in an animation can hide more obvious looping and just really keeps the viewer engaged with what they're looking at, especially in like a very simple loop. And then, so once I have the blink and the kick in place, I just kind of like duplicate the frames. So he kicks his little foot twice in the loop of 12 frames, and then there's a few frames of him not moving his foot at all, and then it goes up, down, and then back to rest, and repeats all over again. And then it repeats forever and ever because it's a GIF, but yeah. For William, I couldn't just have him tapping his foot too, and it would be a little bit awkward with the position that he's in, so he's tapping his finger, rather impatiently, I might add. I almost had him roll his eyes as well, but I wanted to keep the 2 of them very, very similar, and I felt like it just wouldn't look as nice when they were sitting side by side. And I didn't really want the eye to be like the focal point as well. I think having kind of like the hand on the knee and then the foot crossed over the knee be like the main movement, like works to keep them a pair. The finger was kind of interesting to animate also. I do think it ended up looking slightly odd, but I think it's mostly because of the very simple style. Realistically, when he puts his finger up, you'd be able to see his other fingers, and I did try to put like a finger back there so you could kind of see it, but it looked a bit off either way, and then I felt that having it without the finger behind his other finger that he's like tapping made the motion a little bit clearer. But generally it was the same process. I didn't give a little bounce for the finger since it's like reaching the leg. And for this one, there's sort of 4 main frames. It goes up a little bit, up the most, down a little bit, back to rest. And then I wove his blink in kind of the same way that I did with Peter. His finger taps happen with no break in between. However, unlike Peter's multiple rest frames between each time he kicks his foot. I ended up putting them like right beside each other on the same canvas after I was finished everything, and I had to do a little bit of tweaking so that both of their animations would be exactly 12 frames long, and I could put them side by side on the same canvas so that I could kind of crop everything and make them exactly the same size so that they would sit nicely next to each other on a web page. But that was kind of basically the whole process. Pretty straightforward. I think they turned out pretty good. I like doing little simple animations like this. Ultimately, I think they turned out super cute. I kind of want to do more little pixels in this style. Actually, I had a lot of fun and it was very rewarding. I think pixel art is very meditative, kind of in the same way that doing hatching is traditionally. It's very precise and very like repetitive in a lot of ways, and so I don't know, it's very fun and it's quite relaxing for me. And so who knows? Maybe I'll also have a little website to share with you all. I am planning to make a NeoCities website. I just need to design it first before I get into it. So it may actually be a while. I have some other projects coming up that I think are going to take up a bunch of my time in the next few months. But either way, whenever I do get around to making a website, I'll probably make a video about the process. HTML and CSS is a lot of fun, and I could share what I know about that with you guys, so I think that would be like a really cool, fun video. But until then, and until next time, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I would recommend that you try out pixel art sometime. If you've never tried it before, it's a ton of fun. And yeah, bye!